Live. And we're live. Hey everyone, my name's Captain Jack, and welcome to Trek Central Live, week 7 actually. Yeah, we're here for episode 7 of Star Trek Picard, titled Nepenthe. I'm of course joined by Mr. Ketwolski this evening. How are you?
Fantastic, sir. How are you?
I'm great, thank you very much. And I'm also joined by Commander Brie, who has returned from her travels.
Hello, I'm back from conventions.
You've been back down to us once again. How was the convention?
It was great. It was a little hectic. That was a story for a whole nother day, but it was a lot of fun. Very
nice. Didn't you do the Spock cosplay as well?
I did. Thursday for the pre-party and badge pickup, which didn't. We're not going to get into that. And then Sunday for the last day, I did.
Awesome. Excellent. Okay, everyone. So, as usual, we do with these streams, we are going to be discussing Picard Episode 7, Nepenthe. This episode was, of course, quite an interesting one and an emotional one in some regards for multiple reasons, shall we say, but mainly the big talking point is, of course, the Riker's return. And before I do go any further, as there's a certain other big talking point I'm sure we'll discuss in the stream today, this will be including spoilers. If you haven't noticed, a big red spoiler warning down below. So turn away now if you haven't watched episode 7 or don't want to be spoiled by any of the discussion. We're also going to be speculating on episode 8 a little bit later, so but we'll warn you before we get into that, so avoid anything around that, or in 5 minutes.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's jump into this. Initial thoughts on episode 7, starting with Brie. What did you think of episode 7 and the whole shindig, basically?
I think I need therapy. That's what I cried so much in that. It was great. I loved it. With exception, I mean, I get why they killed Hugh, but I didn't want it to happen. And when the whole fight scene was happening, I was like, don't you dare touch him. Don't you dare touch him. And then it happened, and I cried, and and then I cried when Soji did her head tilt. I cried when the Rikers met up with Picard. Like, I cried. It was a very emotional episode for me. I was very emotionally distraught.
That is one way to sum it up, I think. Emotions were running high. I'd have to say for myself, as soon as when Picard hugged Deanna for the first time, and the musical themes that blended behind that, holding back manly tears, that I'm going to have to say, to be honest.
Oh, see, I am not afraid to cry. I will cry during Picard. I watch it by myself, so I'm allowed to. When it first airs, when I watch it with other people, I'm like, yeah, it's a real sad part, isn't it?
I'll be back in a minute.
I gotta go get some water. I'll be back.
So, Nick, your initial thoughts on number 7 as well, then?
I agree with everything that Brie said. Very emotional episode. I have watched it probably 4 times now. I watched it again last night, and every time that Riker sees Picard for the first time in the house, and he smiles and he embraces him with his dough-covered cheese hands for making the pizza. I smile as well, and it's like an involuntary thing. It's just great. It was just a great episode, and really, really very smartly written. Like, this was a very smartly written episode. There was a lot of character play and discussion going on, and this one, I think, relied very heavily and leaned very heavily into the people watching, with the assumption that people watching this show have an understanding of the next generation, because the character of Riker and Deanna will jump right back into their roles from the TNG shows very, very easily, and they just jump right into it. So there's a bit of an assumption that people know what's going on, which I think is a fair one.
Yeah.
And it worked out really well. It was a fantastic episode, and I was definitely particularly shocked by how much I liked the character of Kestra as well.
Oh, definitely.
She's great.
So Kestra was played by Lulu Wilson, and as me and Dom said earlier in the week, I think she did a fantastic job of bringing Kestra alive, because it's very hard. Kestra is only appearing in one episode, as we know, unless they do a surprise, but so far she's only appearing in one episode. It's very hard to establish such a likable character in what essentially is about 45 minutes, roughly. For that to happen is very hard, and I think she pulled it off extremely well. Just from the first entrance as well, I just loved it, to be honest, and she did such a fantastic job.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. The actress did a great job with it, and it was just done in a way that felt very childlike, and it was almost a little over the top, but in like a good way, because of the way that her character it was intended to be had this level of intensity to it, so that it kind of went up against what Soji was feeling. And I thought it was great. It was a smart choice putting those characters together, and I loved it. Yeah, I loved her character.
So I guess one scene I want to talk about, which we've we started discussing last week as well when we spoke about not seeing much footage past episode 7, essentially, through the trailers. But the mind meld between Commodore O and Jurati, that revealed and hinted towards what is probably going to be episode 8, 9, and 10. And after watching preview for episode 8, which we'll discuss later, it's pretty obvious what's going on. Well, not pretty obvious. It's evident something else and bigger is going on. Exploding planets, Romulans ripping their faces off, and random synthetic people. It's a roller coaster for disaster. But Brie, I know you want to say something. So
I have a theory for this.
Go on then.
So, okay, I know I've seen it brought up so many times. Can Romulans even do mind melds? And obviously, like, one, they're very relatively close related to Vulcans. But if you watch it over again, when she breaks out of the mind meld, one, she reacts pretty strongly. She yells. So that's like, you wouldn't normally do that if you're a Vulcan. And you're like, the other thing is while it seems like Jurati throws up at every little thing, it could be that the mind meld was it wasn't a true mind meld, so she reacted poorly to it. So that's, for me, the combination of immediately her throwing up and then immediately Commodore O yelling, basically. I was like, this is not a normal mind meld. People should really know by now that this is a Romulan. Obviously they've made it clear at this point, but I don't think it's a true mind meld, and I think that's why there was that negative reaction between them.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting perspective. I would say that traditionally we're very accustomed to the mind meld just being used to kind of share some emotions and stuff like that, or some visions. And obviously we had the whole situation with, Sarek and Picard and all that stuff. But what Discovery has done, and even going as far back as Enterprise, is they've expanded a little bit more on what the mind meld can do. Because when T'Pol was essentially assaulted through the mind meld, there was a whole sharing of all sorts of things. And I think she got sick from that, if I do remember that correctly. And
so she didn't throw up, but yeah, she didn't feel well, and she had to
there was something
weak.
there.
Yeah, she was weakened.
There was something that had occurred with that. So I think the mind melds definitely is not perfected if the person doing it maybe doesn't really know exactly how they're doing it correctly. And B, I think it's a little bit more than what we're necessarily used to. Because we even saw Sarek and Michael Burnham have this telepathic link across, the galaxy. And that was, I think, kind of attributed to the fact that he had mind melded with her previously. So it was definitely an interesting kind of expansion on the mind meld of that your theory there. I like that. I like that idea potentially, for sure.
It's pretty interesting to see also the scenes it displayed as well. Not only the fact she is able to mind meld in some sort, but those specific scenes. We see that circular object which we discussed last week, Nick, which now appears to be Commodore O is related to that herself. We see her in the hooded sort of attire. I almost want to say like a Romulan priest outfit. It looks like some sort of symbolic thing people would wear when they're involved in crazy orders like that. We've seen it with Klingons and stuff before, so yeah, you get the gist. But they're surrounding the circular object. I really like the
design too.
And it's kind of interesting, to be honest. And also this object is very interesting and what it could mean. For the episode 8 preview, for those who've seen it, it's also shown in that as well, along with some of those flashback scenes. So it is interesting there. But also the exploding planets. A lot of people are linking it to Control from Discovery. And I think we discussed this theory a couple of streams back, if not last week. I can't remember off the top of my head. But whether Control could link to Picard, I personally would hope not, because it means the stories are flowing around and too interconnected in a way. Connecting stories is good in one way, in my opinion, but interconnecting them too much is a bit OTT. What do you guys think about the possibility of Control being linked to this? Let's just discuss this for a second.
I don't like the idea, and I don't want it to happen. Yeah, I don't like it.
I don't want it. I just don't want it. They may do that, but I don't want it.
Yeah, even going back to Discovery, I wasn't always the biggest fan of that. One, I don't think it got expanded on enough for me to be invested in it, so I wouldn't really be too down for it to be brought up in Picard, just because, I don't know. I feel like I just wasn't a big fan of the Control arc.
See, I've read the Control books, which is kind of where it comes from. I believe it's written by David Mack. Dom's in the chat, so you might correct. It's either David Mack or Dayton Ward. I always get the two confused. I'm so sorry, but it might be David Mack. And that explores Control in 2381, roughly around the time, the whole Section 31 is collapsing in the extended universe, obviously in books, so it's not technically canon. And their Control does make sense. So with Discovery Season 2, and I know we're going on a bit of a whatever you call it, a tangent. Discovery using Control is a bit weird. It did sort of fit in the end, but it also didn't flow to a
Yeah.
high degree. It fitted well because it made sense with the books, but it didn't follow through with how it's meant to go through the book in a way. I wouldn't like Picard to use control, but there's definitely some similarities there, and in a way it's a little bit too similar, I feel, for the actual shows itself, and they could, not alienate audiences in a way, but get people a little bit confused. If the casual viewers just watch Discovery Season 2, and now they come to Picard and like, hang on, it's synthetic life destroying, what? For me, I feel like the average viewer might get a little bit too confused about that. That's kind of my concern.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a fair concern, because I think it's a fair concern at this point in the series, because we don't have the answer yet. We don't know what the vision thing is with that, O showed to Girardi. We don't really understand what that is, where that came from, how that's going about. We don't really know too much about that part of the plot yet, which obviously we're probably going to get in 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
So hopefully by the end of the series, it's way more clear. But you're right. At this point, it's probably a little confusing to some people if they're not super up and up about what's going on. For sure. Definitely.
Hopefully it's going to be more unique. Like I said, we don't have the answers yet. I feel like episode 8 might provide us a little bit more information about that, because as we've kind of theorized, it's kind of like episode, it's going to be probably clearing a lot of stuff up and answering a lot of quick questions before we jump into what appears to be a two-parter for 9 and 10. So that would make sense. And hopefully there's a bit more detail out of it. I just feel at a minute it could be verging a bit too closely. But yeah, I guess if we to move to another discussion point for tonight, let's talk about Hugh's death, because that's a big... after you.
Sorry, before we get into Hugh's death,
course,
which I think we need to, which is a big thing, I do want to touch back on, we saw in the preview that O was present where that circular thing is on the ground.
Where everyone goes mad.
And it's, right, that's right. So it's unclear, I think, at this point, when that vision occurred. Now, obviously, Romulans and Vulcans can live for a much longer period of time than normal humans. So it's unclear when that sequence takes place. Now, a lot of the flashback sequences that we've had, I think, from the show have been kind of within the time period of like 15-ish years from the start of the show. Yeah. So I'm wondering if this is going to be the first flashback that goes even further back, potentially, depending on when they are at this device and doing whatever it is that they're doing there. I'm just curious. I don't know. It's not like if she's the head of Starfleet security, she could just go pop off to some place and go do some weird ritual thing and then head back to work. You know what I mean? So it's like, when did this take place? I wonder.
It's an interesting idea, because you got to think how long Romulans and Vulcans can live for. Because I'm pretty sure Vulcans can live for 300, 400, I think, off the top of my head. I mean, Spock was pretty old by the time of the Next Generation. He lived practically even further. So if you add the dates up, he probably lived... he probably could still be alive if he stayed in the prime time up until 2399, theoretically. So therefore, how long can you average Romulan and Vulcan live for? Now, because Romulans are technically descendants of Vulcans, theoretically, they should be able to live the same amount of time as a Vulcan, give or take. So therefore, how old is Commodore O is the question, because there's no way this vision could relate back to the beginning of the separation or the Great Exodus, whatever you want to call it, because that wouldn't really make logical sense unless she's a time traveler. Let's not go down that road.
I don't want to.
I don't want time travel.
The time ship
I'm not thinking
somewhere.
it's time travel, but I am curious as to when that sequence takes place in the timeline. If it's going to be further back than what we've seen so far, maybe it's going to allude to events maybe that like happened in previous shows that were kind of happening concurrently that we didn't know were going on or something like that. And they're going to maybe tie in some of the other series and stuff. So I'm just excited to see what they do with it. There's some wiggle room there, I think. So I'm excited to see what they do. But anyways, that was the last thing I wanted to talk about. Sorry, we can talk about...
Let's talk about Hugh in that case, because, and I think I mentioned this to you after I watched episode 7, personally for me, and this might be a controversial opinion, so feel free to shoot the phasers at me in a minute or torpedoes, I felt like Hugh's death was a bit meaningless, if not worthless in a way. For me, just getting a knife to the throat and falling over and be like, carry on my legacy, activate the cube, was a bit meh, in my opinion. After, I don't know if it's because I'm too used to the action hero deaths where it's like, they die as they press the button and everything blows up, etc. I just felt if Hugh had died, as he pressed the final button, freeing his people, activating the Borg cube, it would have meant more rather than just leaving up to Elnor. I just felt like it didn't really mean much in a way. I could be wrong, but that's kind of my opinion though. But what did you guys think about his death? Maybe Brie, you could start.
No, I can definitely relate to you. The only reason I say I can see why they did it is because it's more of how much he was going to be. I don't know. I understand why they killed him. I agree with you. I wish they did it a different way. I understand because I think it's gonna affect Seven somehow, which I'm gonna get it. That's a whole nother theory for later about Seven in the next episode and why Hugh dying is probably gonna lead to something happening to Seven, which I don't want to talk about really, but I feel like they set it up for that for a reason. But I really think it could have been done better. What I thought was going to happen when I first watched it, and he said, like, you need an XB, I was like, oh, he died. He's going to be, they can use him in his dying breath. No, he died too quick. And I was like, all right, so then.
Yeah, it's. I just wanted him to get to the Queen cell and press the button. It would have been great.
Yeah, but I think that they're doing it for reasons related to Seven. And that's what I don't like. But.
Actually. Someone else just said there in the chat, Larry just said, first the boyfriend gets a knife in the pilot episode, and then this episode Hugh also gets... A lot of people are throwing knives around here. Nobody knows proper caution with knives, honestly. Nick, what did you think, by the way?
I think the Zotfosh love a good knife throw. I think they're addicted to it. They love throwing knives. So I'm on the other side. I actually thought the death was perfect. I felt like we had engaged with Hugh a sufficient amount, more than we've ever have in the past, and I felt like not every person is going to die in the arms of Picard. And I think the biggest thing that I've seen so far come out, which is, well, Picard wasn't there, and it's like, well, yeah, but people die when he's not around. Things still happen, and I actually thought it was a bit bold on their part to do that in a way that didn't directly impact Picard, because right now Picard's still running around doing his thing, and he has no idea that Hugh has died. He doesn't even know what's going on with Elnor in this episode, for the most part of it, at least. And it's I thought it was bold of them. I do agree in some regards. Like, I wish he had done a little bit more towards saving the XBs and getting the cube back. But at the same time, though, it just, I thought it kind of went to show like how out of his depth he was dealing with, the Zotfosh and the Romulans, and even Elnor being kind of like this younger character, but he's obviously able to handle his own. But Hugh's not a fighter, he's a Borg drone, and then he was basically like a research scientist director, and he was just a bit out of his element, and he was kind of being foolish, running around thinking everything was going to be this cool, hokey adventure, and he got knifed in the neck, And it's not to say that we may not. That I don't know if that's really his end. I think he got a better death than Egypt did, who got tortured and his eye ripped out. True. But I don't necessarily know that this is his end. This isn't the first time. It wouldn't be unheard of in Star Trek for them to heal people with Borg nano drones and things like that. Yeah, exactly. So there could be more. There could be more to Hugh, as far as I know. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I hope so, in a way. I just feel, like you said, the character has had a very good arc throughout the whole of Star Trek, not just through Picard. But I feel like there's still a few missed opportunities there and such. So I hope it isn't the true end for the character. But judging from what StarTrek.com released and how Jonathan Del Arco was talking about it, I think it's the end for the character, unfortunately. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see, how it pops up and stuff like that. Michael just said, good interview with Michael Chabon and Jonathan Del Arco on Hugh's death, just dropped on IndieWire. We'll have to look into that later and how it plays into it. But I reckon episode 8 will show us that. But Brie, like you mentioned as well, through the exclusive clips that have come out, when Seven arrives in episode 8, and we'll speculate a bit on it now, her immediate thing is to ask, where's Hugh? The reason why she kind of asked that, what will be in episode 8, is because the Fenris Rangers SOS sort of button Elnor presses actually belong to Hugh, which also revealed by Michael Chabon himself via his Instagram Q&As. He does weekly Q&As for those interesting. Just go to his Instagram profile, and I think he usually does them on Fridays or Saturdays, so good option to get some of your questions across there. I sent him some questions about the Titan this week. Apparently the Titan was mentioned in the script at one point, but it was cut out for various things. So they did consider adding in the Titan. I don't know if you guys caught it, by the way. Someone pointed out on Twitter, I forget the username now, it's G something, that Riker's trombone can be seen in the background when they walk into one of the kids' rooms in the house. And I thought it's a great little detail someone snuck in there.
Oh, really? I didn't see that.
I'll have to go find my Twitter account in a minute, but you can just see it. I think it must be only a couple of frames, but you can just see the corner there. I think it's a great little detail as well. I love it.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see that. I was looking forward to them mentioning the Titan. It's technically alpha canon because they referenced it in Star Trek Nemesis, so it definitely exists. the specific model obviously has not appeared on screen yet.
So
that's
Titan's
still a
canon
debate.
is kind of like up in the air. Some people factually consider the Lunar class as concrete canon. By now, I'd say it might as well be canon. The look of it might as well be, but obviously up until it appears on screen, it's not. Therefore, the Titan is only canon by name, and the fact Riker and Troi served on it. That's all we've got in canon, as far as I know. So yeah, we did also make a video on this for anyone who wants to go watch it and everything we know about the Titan. We was hoping to get more information with this one, but obviously we didn't. Now, an interesting detail, I don't know if you two caught this as well, is Riker does actually mention at the end of the episode he's still on active reserve within Starfleet, which is a kind of a little interesting detail that serves no sort of extra info to the overall story of Picard so far, but they almost put that there to almost confirm in a way that yes, Riker could be back in uniform, maybe with the Titan or the Enterprise or the Verity. Wishful thinking. Anytime soon, essentially. So to get the last one in there, tick a few boxes.
Yeah, I definitely think that they put that in there intentionally. I think that the amount of care and effort that goes into the script in every one of these episodes, I don't think that line was added in just to be a throwaway sentence, because it, like you said, it didn't really add anything to the conversation. They weren't even really talking about that. He just kind of mentions it when he asks him. And I think it was definitely intentionally put in there to allude to something. And he even says, I think, like, there'd have to be a really good reason for him to get involved. Like, I don't know, maybe a war with the remnants of the Romulans, perhaps.
An
I don't know.
activated Borg cube blowing up parts of the galaxy.
Borg cube. Yeah, exactly. A Borg cube zipping around the Beta Quadrant, very much.
Like people in the chat saying, it was totally foreshadowing for something. What's actually interesting is through a couple of behind-the-scenes pictures, LeVar Burton and Michael Dorn were both on set during episode 8's filming. 7, sorry. Which is pretty interesting. And that's all
we do know for sure that one of the clappers that they used towards the ending of filming had Michael Dorn's signature on it as well.
Some of us spent way too long theorizing of that.
The thing is I do think that there's a possibility that this is going to end with like some giant battle in space, and what's going to happen is that the Enterprise and maybe some other ships are going to show up to help save the day, because obviously La Serena is not up to the challenge to beat back a Romulan fleet or anything like that, or even the Borg cube if it goes that way. So
I just wrote our script for which Brie's gonna record later for the episode 8 preview, and in it I was obviously breaking down everything like frame by frame. Without we'll spoil it anyway. Without going into it, in it you can clearly see the Borg cube reactivated or regenerating, but also you can see more of these Romulan, like smaller warbirds or whatever they're being called, these Romulan ships popping up and also shooting at something as well, which to me would prompt enough for certain individuals to return to Starfleet or calling a certain starship, especially if Starfleet learn their director of intelligence is probably a Romulan who's been up to a bit of a dodgy stuff, as you do. So that would probably warrant, dragging the Enterprise out of mothballs or something.
Definitely.
In the end of the episode, when he was like, I should contact Starfleet, I'm like, don't you dare contact Starfleet. I swear to God, don't you do it. You'll ruin everything.
He's just going to call Commodore O and be like, hey. Right.
Please stop. Don't do it.
It'd be like that weird thing where like Commodore O is halfway through talking and like the evil voice then has to turn to the good voice. It's like Palpatine.
Yeah. I have assurances. My ambassador did arrive, and he puts the cork on. Kill them. Yeah. That's it. She puts her sunglasses on. That's the difference when she talks to the Zod.
A lot of people, the thumbnail for today's stream actually is the sunglasses thing, so I found it funny. But a lot of people are like saying, oh, maybe she's from the mirror universe if, she's wearing sunglasses, stuff like that. I don't think it's a mirror universe in a way. I don't want it to be connected to that. I just think she loves her style, to be honest. And I've seen a ton of comments, and the attempted sarcasm by me to reply with style to every comment about the sunglasses is just too much, to be honest. Jet Screamer, thank you for the $2 donation. Any thoughts about Data's 5 queens at this point? Yeah, it's funny you should bring that up, actually. I believe someone asked Michael Chabon a question about this. The Queen's thing seems to be carrying through quite a lot. And I think me and Nick discussed this last week as well, on how this appears to be a recurring theme. Queen is referenced on the Borg cube by Hugh. Episode 8 kind of indicates 7 might be a Borg Queen. That's just a theory, but I don't know. A lot of people are jumping to that. Data had queens.
I think that's what's going to happen, which is why I'm so mad.
Oh, dear. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah. I'm thinking at this point, where we're at episode, and I could be totally wrong on this, but right now at episode 7, I don't think that at this point, I'm not sure if there's a significance to there being 5 of the queens. I think that there is now just a significance of the queens in general. So that's where I'm at right now. I think that because there's, like you said, there's a lot of talk about queens in this show, and there's a lot of different queen elements to it, which so now I'm thinking that maybe the 5 isn't really what was important. It was just the fact that there was queens there, because again, that wasn't like a flashback or a vision. It was just a dream as far as we know. So why would it have a key critical plot detail about the future of the universe in Picard's dream from the beginning of the season? That would be very bizarre to try to explain that. So yeah, I'm thinking that was just kind of a tease for us as the audience, but it wasn't. I think we're probably reading more into it than they probably intended in that regard.
As we know with like CBS's modern Star Trek shows, there's always plenty of stuff to throw people like us off who have too much time on our hands and sit around and pull apart every screen. It's like with the whole thing of Picard. I'm pretty sure if we rewind back to our earlier videos and how we speculated about it, none of it's correct by a mile. Probably because we're also excited at the same time. But that's like the beauty of it, is, theorizing on what potentially could come, and and then it's not. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So it's it's definitely, they're definitely doing their best to try to keep us from knowing exactly what's going on. And then obviously, like we mentioned earlier, we don't really know too much in terms of previews from what episodes 8, 9, and 10 are going to have. Like, we have really no footage. The only one that we really have right now is that group of them standing around the circle on the ground. And I think we have that one other shot of the crew like on a desert planet.
Yes.
But
now,
beyond
that could
that,
be this
we've got
episode.
nothing.
That could
What's
be
up?
episode 8, because that circle thing also appears on some sort of sandy, barren planet, and we see them there. And also in that picture, Elnor is not present either, which suggests it could be episode 8, but that's me just speculating. Thank you to Amir, who donated $5. I still think the only 2 queens are Data's, since he only asked for 2 cards before he showed his hand. Could be an interesting theory. Maybe someone will have to go back and look at that. Before we do continue, the episode names as we go on now. Episode 8 is called Broken Pieces. Could be alluding to the Borg cube being fixed. Episode 9 is called Et in Arcadia Ego Part 1, and then episode 10 is called Et in Arcadia Ego Part 2. I believe that's the name of the painting, as me and Nick looked into it throughout the week. If anyone wants to theorize on what the hell that's about, feel free. You're welcome to tweet us. Our Twitter handle's down below, because I can't read that, and I'm sick of pronouncing it, because it's a pain in the ass.
I have no theories on how that's going to play out. Because there's just still so much we don't really know yet. So
someone asked Michael Shabon, I just have a few screenshotted questions here. Someone said, asked me questions. They said, I don't know if this would be answered this before, but will there be a new Starship Enterprise, maybe in season 2? Cross fingers. He just responded with a zipped mouth emoji. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely going to be something. We're going to get something before, I think even before the end of this season.
If we don't, I will not kill someone, but do something very mean.
Well, we just don't have a lot of starships in this show, which is probably my one of my only real complaints, is that I wish we had more starships.
I think, we do have starships in the show. However, we don't have like the ones we're typically used to. Like throughout Star Trek's 50-year history,
right.
We're very used to your typical Federation starship, 2 nacelles, very sleek body, going around like that. That's kind of what we're used to. So Discovery kind of broke it a little bit. And it still fits in there, and you did get a ton of, like, even in Discovery's 2 opening episodes, we had a ton of brand new starships with the Battle of the Binary Stars. That gave us, I think, I want to say 12 starships off the top of my head. Someone can probably correct me on it, but it gave us a ton, basically. And I know Hero Collector probably had a field day with making those starship models, and they're still doing them to the day.
Both Federation and Klingon.
Exactly.
Design.
I always forget about the Klingon ones. Whereas Picard, we've not really got that many so far, because even the shuttles, and we've had this discussion many times before, they aren't technically new, as they are Discovery shuttles, just modernized ever so slightly. But the Romulan, it's nice we've got some expansion on modern Romulan designs as well, like the new Snakehead shuttle, which was shown in this episode.
I love those.
It was really cool. I also do slightly feel for Narek, who had basically F all to do in episode 7. He just sat there flipping the Rubik's Cube the whole time. That was it. How boring.
I think he had like one line in the whole episode where he was
and
like...
it was cussing. Oh, wait, no.
Yeah.
He had the one line at the start saying, I'm ready, or like departing now.
Yep.
And then he just had like the following line, which is like, damn, as he like slammed the computer down.
He's just tapping furiously on his flight joystick.
I have one
his
of
manual
those.
control steering column that he had there. Very nice Easter egg. of
I
the
don't know where
manual
it's gone
control
around to
column.
anymore, but to play Star Citizen Elite Dangerous, I have the same thing he uses to fly the ship. I don't know where it is now. Somewhere in this film.
Well, now you're using the same technology they use.
Now I just need a weird
so.
little Rubik's Cube and an emo haircut, and I'll be complete, to be honest.
Just dye your hair black. Yeah, get the 5 o'clock shadow, the permanent stubble. You're basically an Eric at this
I'll
point.
be cosplaying now at Star Trek Las Vegas when I can grow a beard.
I'm gonna warn all of your future romantic relationships not to go into a closed room with you at all, especially
if I've got a cube in my hand.
yeah. This relationship's over.
Is that wooden flooring in this room on a metal environment?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's one thing that
Where are
got me.
all these
Wow,
candles
these
on the
lanterns
ground?
really. I was like, yeah, these lanterns really give it a great feel.
That's one thing that got me about episode 6. When did they have time to laminate the floor in the Borg cube? Who is the interior designer for this cube? Let me meet them.
I mean, I was going to say I love the interior designer. I fell in love with the design of that room. I wasn't here for that conversation, but I just have to tell you how much I loved the design of that little meditation room.
It was a lovely room up until some idiot released some toxic gas in there. Someone had to break the floor. Honestly, people in this universe have no regard.
They're going to bill her for that. That's for sure. Yeah. She wrecked that. Some guy was just showing up to go do his daily prayers. And he's like,
yeah.
Sorry, you gotta go do it outside. And he's, what the hell happened? It doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. It's funny we're talking about this because this was the other episode. But what's interesting is the fumes were in the room. She rips a hole through it. Wouldn't then the poisonous gas go through the giant hole?
Maybe they have great air
They didn't
conditioning.
even talk about that.
Maybe they put up like a force field around, like to contain it or something.
It's possible.
I don't know. But then why didn't they do it around
force
her, if other than convenient?
Why didn't she just kick the bloody door down and beat the shit out of those two?
Like you all get it too now.
Plot
Why
armor.
doesn't he just shoot her in the head? I mean,
That's what a lot of people say about Elmer, which I find quite funny. Realistically, I've seen animations of this before, a bit like Star Wars, where someone's jumping around the lightsaber. Just pull out the gun and blow the bloody head off. Problem solved.
yeah. So it's interesting you say that because when they had the quarter fight with Elnor and the Zat Vash, it was done in a way that was beneficial for the filming because obviously they had all these different like hallways and different ways where you can like run around and hide in. But if it had occurred in an open space, like it would have been game over. Like they would have just shot him. Like it's. I actually was expecting him to deflect one of the bolts.
This isn't Star Wars.
From. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's some vibranium sword or whatever. I don't know.
Now
This
we're
is
looking at
Marvel.
Oh, no.
all right, whatever. I don't know. It was just like, okay, yeah. I was like, well, it's a good thing that nobody turned the lights on in the Borg cube, and he's just bouncing around the hallways. It worked really well for him.
One thing with a Borg cube design, you speak about lights. What is with the weird like strobe flashlights and searchlights going on there? As Narissa was there talking, there's just like a light
has been
planning
an all
by.
track.
It's like some blokes up top like whizzing around a light going, do you mind? Honestly.
One of my biggest complaints of specific it's weird, and I don't have anything that would technically bother me for strobe lights other than just not liking them. But there's almost an episode in every single series where I almost can't watch it because of how much. In Enterprise, it was the Vulcans turned into zombie episode, and it was just like constant strobing, and I'm like, please stop. And there was one in Voyager that I could barely watch for the same reason. And I think I'm not sure if Next Gen had one or not, but yeah, I'm with you. I don't know what it is with Star Trek and loving their strobe lights, but it really bothers me my eyes.
They do love a strobe light. They do, and yeah, there's a guy I assume with a spotlight just passing it back and forth. I mean, obviously it builds.
He just wants to find his keys.
He's just looking for a place to go do his prayers because somebody wrecked the prayer room. It obviously builds to that style of like, almost, I don't want to say it's like this encampment, this, like it's building up this feeling like it's a prison, and prisons have the spotlights and the towers. And I get it. Like, I understand like that's the depth that they're adding to the sequence, but you're right. When you stop to like think about like, where is this guy with the spotlight? Is it a drone, or is it just some dude moving it back and forth, or why would they bring those? It's very strange. I don't know. We can pick everything apart.
So one thing I want to say, is I just remembered it. So in episode 6, Narissa basically identifies the planet through Soji's sort of dreams, and she basically asks for a sitrep on it in order to find it. I feel like with episode 7, we didn't get any advancement on that because they were too busy pissing around on the cube. as Brie breaks the room.
Yeah.
They were
just
too busy
spilled
messing
something.
around. You fix that in a minute. We'll discuss this weird theory.
Yeah. No, you're good. I'm just gonna move something out of the way now,
Okay.
so I don't do that again.
There wasn't any progress on that. Like, okay, is the like Red Planet thing on hold at a minute while we run around on the cube and murder our favorite characters, or something else?
Yeah, so
Maybe we're still finding it.
this was, and I'm curious to see how they play this up in episode 8. And this has been happening a little bit. It's been getting, I think, progressively, I don't want to say worse, but more noticeable is probably the better way to put it as we kind of get through the season, is there are parts to this story that are taking longer to get through in the episode, where in certain subplots, when they cut back to it, only a second has gone by. So like when we were spending all that time with Picard at the Riker homestead, it was obviously like a full day, like a whole day had gone by. But whenever they cut back to the Borg cube, it felt like it was literally, it only took like all of the sequences from when they had Q and they shot all the XBs to Hugh dying, excuse me, not Q, Hugh dying. It felt like only like a few minutes.
Said the magic word.
Q, yeah. It felt like only a few minutes had passed, if that. It felt like it happened very, 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 very quickly. And it's gotten more noticeable, I think. And that's why, going back to your point of like, well, why didn't she get an update on it? Well, because I think in the timeline that's occurring on the cube, it almost feels as though
a couple of hours, whereas like on Nepenthe,
maybe even
it's a whole
less.
day.
Yeah, maybe even less than that. Maybe like it's been like a whole hour since Soji busted through the floor, they escaped, and then Hugh dying. It feels like it's only been like an hour. So they probably haven't had the chance to do that. But then you cut back to La Serena or the homestead, the Riker homestead. It definitely feels as though time had gone by. But on that particular plot, it did not go as the same speed as the other ones. And it's happened before in the show. Like I said, I think now that these other things are taking a little bit longer, but there's still action happening elsewhere, it's more noticeable now. And I'm hoping that they spend some time to correct that, or not necessarily correct it, but are more cognizant of how they're editing these things together for episodes 8. Because I think I'm hoping it doesn't get more and more noticeable with the time dilation there.
Speaking about episode 8, Amir just donated in Kent with a very good point. Everyone here has seen the trailer for episode 8 via the CBS one. He says, do you think that's a Borg temporal vortex forming in the next episode like in First Contact? Let's quickly speculate. We're about 20 minutes here. Let's speculate about episode 8 from there, as I know we're all dying to anyway, as per usual. Can't contain ourselves. In episode 8's preview, we see the Borg cube, a couple of Romulan ships, and also La Serena almost going into this like weird vortex thing. For a minute I thought, oh hello, they've borrowed the end of Discovery Season 2's thing again, but no, it's something different. And the La Serena is in the slipstream, meanwhile the Borg cube and its mini fleet of Romulans are apparently firing on it, or it's the trailer's framed to make it look like they're firing on it, but we know how teasers and trailers are very deceiving when it comes to CBS Star Trek in general. That's not a complaint, it's just a general fact. So, I don't know, something's going on there. It could be a Borg temporal vortex. We did get that little throwaway line about chronometric activity and stuff before, but I don't think that's anything to go by just yet, and I'd happily be wrong. Either way, it looks kind of weird, but what's going on there? What do you guys think about that? Tell us your theories about episode 8. Nick, you go first.
I'll let Brie go first.
Brie can go first. Either way.
All right. So I don't have an opinion on the temporal vortex part, because I don't know. I didn't even cross my mind, but I do like the idea.
Okay.
My theory definitely revolves more around 7. And the Borg Queen stuff, which is been brought up a lot, but also I'm that kind of nitpicky where like I'll be on Twitter and I'll see one of the actors tweet something and I'm like, oh, confirmed. But like Jonathan Del Arco was like, we love our Borg Queen when talking about Jerry Ryan, and I'm like, I know he probably didn't. It could go either way, kind of thing. So I'm like, was he just saying it because she is a queen, or are we saying it because she's gonna be the Borg Queen, like for real next? Because that's the thing that was brought up is like if you look at the little frame where she's hooked up with like tubes and she doesn't look like she has her own eyes anymore. That definitely lends to the whole Borg Queen. Plus, if you go back to like who she is, she was basically raised to be a princess of the Borg, basically. Like she was supposed to take the position of the Borg Queen in general, like that's what she was for. So I mean, it's one of those where in Voyager, like, oh, she didn't fulfill her destiny kind of thing. But what if she did? What if it just was in this series and not in Voyager. Kind of. That's kind of what I've been thinking.
So German Trekkie just actually said something. He says, "What about transwarp portal opening?" That's a good idea, actually. In the books and also Star Trek Online, they explore the whole idea of transwarp and slipstream and quantum travel, etc. So you know, the last arena I should say, still using warp is kind of like should be old by this date almost. Like Starfleet ships by extended canon, which obviously isn't canon in its own right, they should be using transwarp and also quantum slipstream travel and stuff like that, and various other forms of faster than light travel. So perhaps the Borg cube or something else is doing that. Also, thank you to Michael for donation there. Hey guys, not sure if it's been brought up just yet. Has there been any social media posts by John Delancey that may hint as a possible Star Trek Picard cameo? Nick, you are an expert on this one. I don't think it has been anything.
So he, before I think maybe about a month or two before the show premiered, he did a StarTrek.com interview where he went over the history of him being as the character of Q from TNG on through to Voyager. So he did that, which was a little suspect considering that the new season of Picard was coming out shortly thereafter. And then I think like right before the show premiered, he had tweeted out some photo that it was like a business or something like that. It was like a building, and I think it said like the words Borg at the top. He didn't have any caption on it. It was just like the photo, or it was something weird like that. It was something like that. I can't remember exactly what it all said, but yeah, I think that there has not been anything directly related to it. Obviously, we have that suspicious picture from Instagram that we know about, but other than that, nothing that John Delancey has specifically stated or anybody has alluded to. And I think that I still am holding out hope that he's going to appear. And if he is, that would be one of the most closely guarded secrets of this show. So I would be.
They always
surprised.
guard the ending of any series or movie with like such high degree. I mean, look at The Mandalorian for those who watched that. No one expected that ending, I'll say, for those who haven't seen it yet. And also like the end of I used another Star Wars example, or even Discovery as well. No one bloody knew they was going. Well, kind of knew they was going to the future after a while, but you know, or like Discovery season 1, nobody knew the Enterprise was going to show up. You could guess, maybe, but you know, it's like at the end of Picard. We discussed this last week, I think. Brie, you wasn't here for this one. We basically said for the ending of Picard season 1, they have to make the ending justify, but also a little bit of a teaser in order to bring people back for season 2.
Season 2,
it's a standard sort of marketing thing. You don't want a cliffhanger where it leaves us like feeling underwhelmed in a way, or angry, but you want something that's going to make me like go, yes, I want Picard now. The Enterprise at the end of Discovery season 1 was enough for me to go, oh yeah, the story's finished, but also, ooh, tell me more. Keep speaking, you know, something like that. Whereas also with Discovery season 2, if we use that as an example as well, it gives you enough to go, yeah, I want to know what happens to them now. So Picard season 1 needs to do the same thing, but it needs to wrap up the stories. We've got a lot more story threads in Picard season 1 than there have been in Discovery, for example, and other iterations of Star Trek. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they pull this one off, you know, just overall.
You know what I think? I bet the Enclave of 8 that they keep talking about is not even going to be brought to a close by the end of the series. I bet that's going to be something for season 2. I bet you you really find out what the Enclave of 8 is at the end, and you're like, oh, wow, I can't wait to find out more. Because I don't feel like there's enough room right now anymore to even bring up like a conclusion to that, but they've mentioned it so many times.
Yeah,
it makes me think it's going to be that one of those cliffhangers. I don't know. It just popped in my head. I was like, wait a second. There is some stuff that I don't think they can wrap up in time that would be a really good way to cliffhang. Not a horrible cliffhanger, but like just enough that we're like, shit, what is the Conclave of 8?
Yeah, I mean, you're right to say that. Like, I think some of the bigger questions are, what happened to this Borg cube? Who are the Conclave of 8? What's kind of going on with the Zhat Vash? And what's going on with the synthetic life. And I think the synthetic life situation with Soji and these other potentially synths on this planet, I think that's going to be what they resolve for the most part in this season. And then I feel like some of these other elements that they've added onto are going to be kind of intertwined in between the rest of either, you know, however many more seasons we have of Picard. And it would make sense, like, Michael Chabon is a novel writer, and he understands not only how to write chapters, but if you're going to write a trilogy or, you know, whatever it is, you're going to want those plot threads to kind of interweave in between them, to kind of connect the whole entire cohesive storyline together. So it's very possible that they are setting up some of those things to not necessarily get fully answered in this season, which, as you know, Jack, you said, is they may leave us hanging with some of the questions that we already still have, and leaving that level of frustration of like, well, what the hell did happen with that cube, or what the hell did happen with the Conclave of Eight, or what was, maybe we won't even get a real answer as to what that circle thing on the ground is.
If
we
not,
won't really
I
understand
will go
it.
through the roof. One of the answers I want to know is I want to know more about Rios's backstory. Is to me, elusive starships and weird stuff like that.
I love Rios. I want to know more about him.
See, I want to know what the hell's the deal of his starship going off the record, essentially, and being wiped from it. Something dodgy has gone on there, and I want to know. And I hope it isn't a throwaway line. What I also want to say is, Nick, you just brought up Michael Chabon there. Now, obviously, we know he's not returning as showrunner for season 2, which is kind of sad and a bit disappointing in a way, but he's gone off to work on his own show with his wife, and I believe that's still in development somehow. But I believe his involvement in season 2 is still in question, as even he himself has hinted that he might come back in some way in one of his Q&As. My only thing is, like, because this story has been set up by him and he's basically been the shepherd of season 1, I guess you could say, hopefully none of these plot points are going to get lost in season 2 and then 3 maybe. Because if so, that could detract from the story. Like, if there's unanswered questions, we'll be making a video in 2 years' time called The Great Mysteries of Picard. You know, I hope stuff doesn't get that lost.
Hope not.
I don't think it will, because we've got Kirsten Beer, who is also a fantastic writer herself, and I really don't think anything will get lost. But it's just a concern I have with him sort of moving on.
I'm not super worried about it. And the reason I say that is a lot of the core team is still going to be present.
Yeah.
You know, Michael's one guy. And yeah, he wrote the book on this series, and he helped write that 30-page story treatment that got Sir Patrick involved to begin with. But we have no idea what level of involvement other writers and producers and even Sir Patrick have done. So we don't even know if from that 30-page story treatment, how much of that got into the show and how much of it changed. So I of course, it'd be great to have him on there, because I feel like he's built up a lot of street cred, so to speak, in this season, where people are like, I'm like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing and he understands how to do it. But I'm not so stressed, because now they definitely do have a solid template to work off of moving into the future. So I'm not super stressed.
Someone also just said there as well, Michael and someone else just said that Chabon confirmed on Deadline's podcast he's writing 2 to 3 episodes of the next season. So there you go, that's pretty cool.
Okay.
So I presume season 2 will also be 10 episodes off the top of my head. I can't imagine them shortening it. It looks like it's going to be 10 episode blocks from here on out.
I would imagine it's probably going to be... I mean, well, I don't know, because Discovery's seasons have been different. So it's possible.
It could go... I can see it going up in episodes. I can't down below 10. 10 was too few for me, I think. So I can see him going to 12, but I don't think they'll drop it below 10.
12 would be exciting. Yeah, I agree. 12 would be very, very exciting. Yeah, going below 10 would be weird.
I think they'd lose something in that.
Yeah, for sure.
It ultimately depends how much story there is to fit certain episodes, and they kind of already said they morphed. You know, with this season, you know, episode 2 basically came out of nowhere in a way because they had more space or something. There's a longer story around this, Nick. I bet you know more about this. Basically, episode 2 was developed slightly different because they had more stuff to play with or something, wasn't it? I think you were telling me about, or we was having a conversation about something. But yeah, they basically modified season 1. Yeah,
so this was talked about in a few interviews, and I have to go back and try to find the links on it. But basically, they did some rework on the first half of the season to try to flesh out a little bit more of what was going on. And I don't think in any of the discussions if that was affecting the episode amounts, because I think it was always supposed to be the 10-hour movie. So I think it was always going to be 10 episodes. But I'm wondering if the way that they maybe re-edited, and we'll never know because none of us were there unless they talk about it on like the DVD extras or whatever. What if they did make the changes at the beginning of the season? What changes did they make at the back end of it to kind of fill in that space?
Like you say,
we'll never know. But
they definitely did. Those behind the scenes extras come out, we are never going to know if anything was lost. You know, so far from the trailers, unless like one of the scenes we chatted about last week, and I kind of noticed as well watching a preview this week, the shot of like Romulan birds of prey or warbirds, I should say, approaching what appears to be a planet. But it looks like the dust or Vulcan or Mars, a lot of people theorizing. That hasn't appeared so far. So a lot of us are theorizing Is that been cut? Is it gone, etc.? None of us know at the minute unless it appears in 9 or 10, which it could do because those are two-parters. But ultimately, we won't know if anything's been cut until we get to episode 10, and then 6 months later, we also get the behind-the-scenes extras. Thank you to Elma who just donated $5. I want to know what kind of weed was in Matthew's cake to make Agnes throw up so violently. You're gonna have to ask her that one. We do not know. Trekker Price, thank you for turning up. Hello Gary, how are you? Awesome. I'm happy with the episode 10 format. Yeah, 10 episodes is pretty good. I feel like that 10-hour movie, it keeps it strong there. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. By the way, thank you to Michael who was earlier in the chat. He's one of our YouTube members. If you guys are interested in becoming a YouTube member and supporting the channel, we now have a brand new join button, which is located just below, I believe. You can pick that up, get a fancy badge in the chat, and support the channel as well, which is fantastic. So thank you to 3 people who've currently become YouTube members as of today, which is awesome.
So
No, after you.
Oh, I was going to say, I saw something brought up in chat that I really, and you brought it up, was the title of the last 2 episodes. I don't know if anyone else took Latin in high school or anything. Okay, but that was definitely Latin. And so I knew some of the words, but then I decided to look it up. And do you want to know what it can be translated to? Because I think it's going to tell us a lot about the episode. All right. So it direct translation doesn't make much sense. It's just and I too in Arcadia. But if you look at why it's used, it was used in the 17th century in Italy, and it can be translated to even in Arcadia, I death can be found. Okay. Someone's gonna die.
Oh dear.
I'm pretty sure because they wouldn't have used that title if not.
But look on Nick's face right now.
To something. I know.
I mean, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, why else would they put something that I don't know?
The thing is, some of the titles, like Nepenthe, was about healing, if I remember right, or healing wounds or something. But obviously, no one's literal wound was being healed.
Yeah, but it definitely did relate back to the fact that Nepenthe was trying to heal their child. So I definitely can see them using that translation to allude to something that happens in the episode.
Dom just said something in the chat there, or it could mean someone who is dead will be found. Data.
Ooh, that's good too. I like that one a lot. I'm tired of people dying. I don't like it anymore.
I don't think we're gonna. If we found Data, if Data was the one that made all of them,
that makes sense with the books. Just saying.
That would blow my mind.
I like a baby. Please make it happen. I would cry. I would be on the floor in tears. So happy.
I mean, it's very possible because really, and we've talked about this before, which is in the flashback sequence that Soji had during her temple adventure. She was not able to see the person's face that was her dad. She was not able to see. And I am of the belief that it wasn't part of the programming to hide Bruce Maddox's identity. I'm of the belief that there is someone else that assisted Maddox in creating these advanced androids. I think that there's somebody else that is there. If that's, I don't know if that's Data though, because they'd have to really explain how they did that. Unless the first thing that Maddox did was to remake Data based off of one of his neurons.
Possibly. It could be a good idea.
I hope that. I mean, I just want him to come back. He's one of my favorite characters. I've got him as on my lanyard. I take him everywhere with me. That's why I'm so drawn to Picard. The idea that he could still exist in the form of his kids makes me so happy. I love that.
Maybe it's actually
I love this show.
Oh my gosh.
Please don't.
Michael, thank you for the $5 donation. Brie, Captain Jack, Ketwolski, Sarmanite, thank you for talking Trek as I've killed Nick.
Well, the thing is now I feel like we may have just struck gold. I do think. Because here's the thing, right?
I was taking a piss.
They mentioned at the very first episode that the theory was that they could reconstitute Data's entire memory off of a single neuron.
Oh, balls.
And all of the Asha-style androids were perfected way beyond Data's capabilities. So perhaps the first thing that Maddox did was to put Data in a Brent Spiner looking android, and he looks like Brent Spiner, and Brent Spiner is going to be actually in the show.
That'd be cool.
What's interesting is
where he actually looks like a person, like a normal
dude. Where he looks like a regular person, and Data is the one that made the girls look like the painting because that's the painting that he made.
Also reminiscent of Lal in a way, which
Again, I
connects
would
with what a lot of
cry.
people are saying. What's also interesting is, never mind, the thoughts escape my head now. That was good for 5 seconds. Oh,
Wow, great job. They're true professional there. So.
Can't
Oh man,
take
I
it in my
hope
ass.
we didn't just guess it. I hope we didn't just guess that. We may be
Thanks,
wrong.
chat.
So far, we've
I
done
hope we did. Are you
99%
kidding
right.
me? I'd be so happy if that's the case.
Let's go for a full roundhouse. I bet Riker will show up in the Enterprise. Go on. Or the Verity, just saying. One can
I mean,
dream.
yeah, I don't think he's going to show up in the Enterprise, but he's going to show up with something.
Hey, the Titan
Worf
Girls
is going to
would be
show
good.
up with the Enterprise.
Anyone showing up, like in Barclay showing up with the Enterprise would be good enough at this point.
Oh, I love Barkley.
As long as Clancy's not in command, that would be a bit of a too much, to be honest. Self-destruct that ship.
Yeah, seriously.
In the book, she was really good, actually. Like, The Last Best Hope. She had some very good lines in that, to be honest. She wasn't a total
Yeah,
ass.
she did. She did. Yeah.
It's one way to look
I don't
at it.
know. I'm still I actually kind of go back to what Brie you said earlier is 10 episodes is a very short run. And I feel like we're just starting to really connect with some of these characters and the show's going to be over.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which helps helps bring us back because we want more of them. But at the same time though, I want to know them
Wasn't
more.
enough.
Yeah, it doesn't
And
feel
we
like
don't
enough.
even, and I can't even imagine we're going to have the luxury of like short treks, like with Discovery in between seasons. I mean, we might get lucky and they might do something like that, but I just don't like the idea of having such a short season and then having to wait for basically a year to get any kind of answers to, I'm sure, lots of questions that are going to be still open.
Well, stick
Oh,
around,
yeah.
everyone. We'll be theorizing for about a year straight. It's going to be fantastic.
It's gonna be
a
great.
lot.
It's gonna be
Should
great.
actually all go to plan now. It does look like Picard Season 2 will possibly air in January 2020, roughly. However, this could adjust for whatever else they plan to do. But so far, it looks like Picard will air at the start of next year, I think.
Yeah.
Nick, do you have any thoughts on that? Because I think we've discussed that in Section 31 as well, and we kind of know that's been delayed in a way. It's been pushed to 2021, which means they're not gonna be ready to show next year. So therefore, Picard
Yeah,
takes
so
place.
most indications show that the Section 31 show was delayed. Why the delay is there, I don't know. They have not commented on this publicly yet, so no one from Viacom, CBS, or Secret Hideout has come out and flatly stated that the show has been delayed, but they're going to have to do that very soon because of all the previous discussion was they were going to start pre-production like next month, like it was supposed to happen very soon. So they're going to have to talk about that publicly, which then opens up a bit of a slot period where I think they're going to probably stick either one of the other 2 live action shows that they've talked about, probably Pike, and then maybe that other the other Picard season. I don't know if it's going to be right at January, because I think from what I'm gathering is Discovery is going to run from June to maybe August, and then I think they're going to try to then squeeze out Lower Decks basically for quarter 4.
That does make sense for how it's been going, and we discussed this a couple of weeks ago. It looks like at the minute Discovery, as someone just asked in the chat as well, Discovery looks like it may start in either June or July is kind of our theory. They've not announced anything yet. However, they did just announce, I think it was a week or 2 ago, that filming and production is wrapped up, which means they'll go into like the final editing stage, and most likely they'll be going towards marketing and release. There was also some stuff that kind of snuck out we're not allowed to talk about. So I think they're getting close to announcing it with some promo art, but that's all I'll say on that to avoid a conversation.
Yeah. And the channel's got blocked. Yeah. And we're shut down.
I'll be in New York tomorrow morning, please.
Yeah, exactly. Let me in. Let me in. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's, and I wouldn't be surprised either if, I mean, let's just be honest here. Like they're, in my opinion, accelerating the production of Picard because Sir Patrick is, I think he had his 83rd birthday just recently or something like that, and he's not getting any younger. So they got to get it going. And I don't think, despite all the rumors about him dying in this season, he's definitely not going to die in this season. And I would be surprised if he doesn't. I'd be surprised if they kill him before the show is over. I think that would probably be like that'll be the end of this. Like the series run will end with him passing away, and then they'll probably bring everybody in at that point, and maybe we're going to have like an Avengers style funeral with all the TNG as many TNG actors and DS9 actors and Voyager actors they can get. Kate Mulgrew on the
make me cry.
All stood on board the Enterprise as they fire the torpedo at the air.
They're gonna get Geordi to play the bagpipes.
Riker on the trombone.
Yeah, Riker's on the trombone, sad trombone.
Everyone's got a musical instrument. Poor Worf just gets a triangle or some shit like that.
No, Worf's
he hits it too aggressively.
He's gonna be doing some sick ass batleth moves, doing some sweet, Klingon.
I don't think we should be allowed to direct Trek episodes, to be honest.
No, they're
Why fans should
fans, we could do some top tier fan episodes, guaranteed.
Join us
if it was a parody season, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like a parody show, a parody fan show. I'm about it.
Join us next week as I write the pilot episode of Star Trek Laris.
Star Trek
Laris. Feckers.
That's right. With her badass accent. Yeah.
Someone just said
I love
hope we get to see more of them. That'd be great. I hope we do get to see more of them, to be honest. It could be quite cool, but I don't think they'll be back. They might make a cameo, I think, but unlikely they'll be back just yet, because I don't think the series is going back to Earth anytime soon, unless it's in a flashback or it's like Clancy appearing again. Because like I said, the only time we saw Earth was with O in a flashback this week.
We could get a situation where they think the adventure's over. Picard's back on the Vineyard, maybe with Soji.
Actually, they're all having some tea.
Having a bit of tea, and then that's when somebody, maybe a character from the old show, someone who's got a little bit of panache to him with some personality, and he zips in, and I don't know, maybe Q. I don't know. Yeah.
Just as long as no one else dies.
I just nuke the whole place.
I want to ask you guys about that. So this is something that I've seen brought up online, and I think it's a legitimate question. There seems to be a perception among some of the fans, and I'm not just saying like people who hate the show, period, but even the people who like it, that they're killing off a lot of some of the legacy characters that they've brought in. Icheb, now Hugh, and we also had Maddox get killed as well. How do you guys feel about that? Do you feel like it's... I'm just curious, how do you guys feel about that? I have my own thoughts on it, but before I get into it too much.
If you don't mind, Brie, I'll answer this one first.
Go for it.
For me, I think it's fine if it fits the story. Like I say, the only complaint I have so far about the death is Hugh, because to me it didn't really fit the story. Obviously, if episode 8 shows it does, I think I'll be more happy with that. But Maddox fit the story. He essentially needed to die because else the whole jig would be given up straight away. So therefore, finding him and Jurati murdering him, it fits the story. And how we've seen that play out in episode 7, with her being almost like manipulated by Commodore O and shown this gruesome future where everything's blowing up and being nuked, apparently, that would motivate you probably to kill off someone you love, to be honest, if you was in that position. Then with Icheb, that also fit the story because that was Seven's motivation to kick the ass of that woman 20 years later, essentially, or 15 years later, give or take. So therefore, it did really fit the story. Like I said, the only thing so far is Hugh's death for me doesn't really do much. It doesn't make sense. But I expect episode 8 will probably answer that question for me, and if you ask me this question next week, I will probably have a different answer for you when it comes to Hugh. But I don't mind the death of legacy characters, as long as it's important and it's not just done for wow factor. That's the only time it'll like upset me. If they just bring like Worf up and shoot him in the head, I won't be particularly too happy about that. It's like I watch a lot of Star Wars. I'm a big fan of that as well, and obviously quite a lot in in the 3 latest films that have come out. They've killed off most of their legacy characters. First Solo, then Luke, then Leia. They've all basically been gone. So, but that was handled perfectly well, I feel. Like, some people argue over Luke's death, but like Han Solo was killed because his son needed to do what he needed to do. Luke died as a result of, saving rebellion, and Leia died because she, saved her son, don't she? That there fits really well for legacy characters, and I feel Picard is doing the same. So yeah, it's kind of what I had to say on it. But Brie, what do you think?
No, I agree. Like I said, I was really upset by Hugh's death, but at the same time, I guess I didn't find it as... I wasn't as angry about it as you, I think.
Yeah.
But I definitely didn't like the idea that he died. Now, that's why I keep making the joke, please don't kill anyone else, because at this point, I don't see anyone else being an okay character to kill for the story. I see if they kill Seven, I'm actually going to be upset. Not joking upset, actual upset. Because I think that there's more that can be done with her legitimately in the story. But also, that's why I think that something more along the lines that everyone else is talking about with her being a Borg Queen would make sense, because that could tie into the story a little better, but it wouldn't be a true death. But I would be happier her becoming a Borg Queen than her dying, because if she was the queen, I'd join the collective any day.
That's the advertisement.
Sign me up.
That's fine. That's fair. Yeah, I agree with your guys' sentiments. I like I said earlier, I think Hugh's death was was perfectly done. I understand that we have differing opinions on that right now, but I don't think it's gratuitous in the sense that they're just wheeling in old legacy characters just to pop them off. I think they do fit the story, and I think it's a smart way to add some depth to the discussion. Like, you had to kill Bruce Maddox because of Girardi's story, and also because he would be literally spoiling the entire show at that point because he would have all the answers, so they have to get rid of him. But the only logical way to continue the story forward is to find Maddox first. Like, that's what they need to do. So they had to resolve that. Icheb's death was obviously an intent to set up Seven's character arc, which I think we're going to be getting a bit more of based off of the previews for the next episode. And of course, Hugh's death was, I think, like, done well. And I think that we spent an enormous amount of time with him in a good way. I don't think it's over the top. I do notice the fact that they are killing some, like, some of the legacy characters. It's definitely obvious that's some of what they're doing, but I don't think it's like too much, and I don't think that they're trying to go outside of it, because obviously we're like, well, what about these characters? It's like, well, Bruce Maddox was in 1 episode, Hugh was in 2 episodes, and Icheb, and don't quote me on the amount of episodes, but he was in more episodes than the 2 of them. But he wasn't like the star of Star Trek Voyager. Like, if they brought the Rikers in and then Deanna gets axed, like, what? Like, she was only in there for 1 episode. Like, what are you guys doing? And
that's why I'm upset. That's why I don't want something to happen to Seven, because she was like a main character.
Right, she was a main character. And I'm not trying to knock anybody who identified more with Hugh or Icheb or Maddox, for that matter. That's not my point. My point is that in terms of the overall fandom, a death of those major characters would be enormously impacting people's reaction to the episodes, whereas these are honestly relatively minor characters that they are bringing in to add depth to what the other characters' motivations are on the story plot, and their deaths are also serving that story at the same time. So I personally don't have an issue with it, but I wanted to bring that up because I know it's a question a lot of people are talking about. So I wanted to
it's a good discussion point, to be honest. Like I say, I see it a lot online at the minute of how a big criticism by most of the fandom, or not most of the fandom, but like elements of the fan, I'm not saying just people who hate the series because it's, modern Star Trek or anything like that, is they are killing off too many people. But like I said, that if it fits the story, I don't see a problem with it, because death is a thing that's happened in Star Trek before. I mean, one of the biggest deaths and the most controversial one was the death of Jadzia Dax in DS9. That still upsets many people to this day.
It still upsets me to this day, but I mean, it for reasons. But
that was a weird,
it's interesting. Because before the show came out, one of the things that people were complaining about was, don't just bring all these characters into the story into the series if it doesn't fit the story.
Exactly.
Well, they resolved that, but now they're killing some of the characters off, and now people, why are you killing all these characters off if it doesn't fit the story? And it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Because in my opinion, if they didn't bring Seven or Hugh back and they had this plot with the Borg cube, everyone is going to be asking, where's Seven? Where's Hugh? Yeah. What's going on? Why aren't they involved with this situation? So they had to bring them in, and then they can't just keep everybody around, because then people are going to be like, and for season 2, they're going to be like, well, what's going on with Hugh? What's happening with him? Or what's, so it's like they have to kind of do what they can to make it right. And it's definitely challenging. It's 50 years of Star Trek, 50 plus years of Star Trek canon that they're trying to put together, and it's a challenge. And
it's like when
they're doing a good job so far.
It's like when it comes down to discussing inconsistencies and stuff like that. When you're dealing with 50 years, there are going to be minor inconsistencies. I think Star Trek Picard has been pretty on the ball so far with how it treats its canon and lore in general. Obviously, there's always going to be mini inconsistencies, because I said you are dealing with a 50-year legacy that is near shy impossible to keep track of as a writer. Typically, no offense to the writers, I'm pretty sure they do not know every single detail of the entire 50-year legacy of Star Trek. No one knows that. No one in existence apart from the authors and Memory Alpha.
They've been screwing it up since the original series.
There was 3 books on the Next Generation of how it basically contradicted TOS canon. And that's a mess in its own right.
There's dozens of videos on YouTube.
Sorry? 2 seconds.
Hours of Star Trek footage that contradict each other.
I mean, look at the Trill
all the
from
time.
Next Gen to DS9. It was a complete species change of like appearance. Like it happens all the time. It's not something new.
So, and even simple things like in TNG, Data gets shot with an arrow and talks about how it's impacted some of his whatever. And then in First Contact, he gets shot up by a machine gun from Lily, and he's perfectly fine. You know, so it's these things happen. It's kind of part of dealing with so much canon. And then people say, well, then they should just stop making Star Trek. Well, you can just stop watching. Because I want them to keep making Star Trek. Yeah,
Plenty of other people want it.
Right. And they're doing the best they can. I really do think that they're doing the absolute best that they can. And they've proven that with simple things like adding in the daggone trombone, like in the scene that I don't think most people even saw it, but they put it there because it makes sense. So
yeah,
anyways,
they definitely pay attention to detail when it comes to stuff like that. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, if we just could get the Enterprise at any point. Or Titan. One can dream.
That's it. Well, if the Enterprise shows up, if it's the Sovereign, it'll have to be 25% different. So it's going to have to look a little different.
Ketwolski won't be joining us next week. He's been shot out of his lock. All right, everyone, to begin wrapping up this stream as we head towards the end, if you guys in the chat have any questions at all on anything related to episode 7 or what we may think happened in episode 8, take it away now and we'll be sure to answer any of them. I see a lot of people in the chat talking about Sealer at the moment. This is something we discussed last week and we discussed a couple of times before. I know Nick has many theories about Sealer in return. I personally wouldn't be surprised if she popped up as being at the head of the Zat Vash or Tal Shiar, etc. That could be pretty cool, because at the minute, while the chat get the questions in, talking about Zat Vash and Tal Shiar, is Narissa the head of the Zat Vash? Is she the one in charge? Or is somebody of a higher power pulling the strings? Because we don't really know that in a way. It's kind of implied she's the de facto commander at the minute, but I bet there's someone else, pulling strings. Before you do that, Jennifer, thank you for the donation there for $24, saying, Ketwolski, did you open the Picard Zin during episode 1? I think I mean wine. Did you open a wine?
I did. I opened up the Starfleet Zinfandel. I did not open the Chateau Picard. The Chateau Picard is still sealed, but I did have
Brie's gone
Picard
through the whole lot.
Yeah, Brie took it to the neck. She killed it.
That was after Hugh died.
Yeah. That was her post-Hugh death bottle that she drank.
Were you saying, did you do the whole bottle after Hugh's death, to be honest?
I thought about opening one and downing. No, this is actually the Starfleet Reserve. I actually, same as you on the first day, I haven't opened either of my Picard bottles. I'm saving one for when season 2 airs, because I bought 2 of each.
Oh.
So I opened the Starfleet Reserve at season 1. I was going to save the Picard one for season 2.
Unfortunately, I'm in the UK and I don't ship here. Cheers, Star Trek Wines. You ship from France to
We're
LA.
all getting drunk here in the US.
I'm pretty sure it stops halfway through, to be honest. I'm going to do like a heist on the wine box.
But to answer your question, though, I liked it. I thought it was very good. I prefer to have the Zinfandels chilled when I drink them. I know some people like to drink them at room temperature or properly temperature controlled. But I liked it quite a bit. It was very good. And yeah, I mean, is it any better than? I'm not a wine person or anything like that, so I love wine. I couldn't tell you. Yeah, I'm like, was it great? Like, yeah, I mean, it was good, but obviously, I wasn't paying necessarily for what was in the bottle. I was paying to have the bottles. So
I still say for like a field trip, if we do Star Trek Las Vegas this year, let's just all go down to LA and visit the winery. It'd be hilarious. What a great field trip! I know TJ wants to do it.
I'm down. Yeah, I totally want to visit the winery, and then I want to visit where they filmed Chateau Picard. So I want to do both. That's it.
All right, chat. Did you get any of your questions in? I'm annoyed that Cedar is now not the only blonde Romulan. Well, can't please everyone. What else we got? I did miss a stream. We're still here for a minute. However, the stream does have DVR enabled, and you can also watch it if you miss anything in it. It'll be uploaded about 12 hours later. You go back and watch the whole stream. We do that every week. We are looking into creating the streams in a podcast form, as some have asked. Still looking into that in a minute. I'm not sure whether we'll be able to do it for our current streams. However, particularly when we get around to doing our Discovery live streams, when that airs probably in the middle of this year, we'll definitely be doing it in podcast form as well. So after we've done the live stream, people can go listen to it on iTunes, Spotify, insert favorite podcast platform here. We'll find a way. We'll mail it to... No, we're not doing that. Not doing that.
Welcome back to the 90s.
Let's have a look. Ask Bad Robot if they've created merchandise based on canon. We're not going down that road. There's merchandise of Picard coming out. Like, I see these comments sometimes, and Nick, I'm sure you do as well, as you keep an eye on this. There is merchandise of Picard around. Amazon have a ton of it at the minute for us international customers like myself. CBS also have a ton of it on the Star Trek shop, which doesn't ship internationally because I suppose they have Amazon to do that for them now, which makes sense. And I expect when Discovery comes out, you'll also see Discovery merch as well. But also, there is a ton of Star Trek merch around. Probably not to the extent there is Star Wars, but Star Trek has never been to OTT. It has been OTT on merchandise before. I remember the weird Spock helmet that's still around. But
So I actually have this video that I made maybe about 8 months ago, maybe almost a year now. Hashtag video plug, where I go through the history of Star Trek merchandise, where they had the Star Trek tank, because that was definitely a thing that they made. And then a tank. Yes, a tank. Or the Picard, or excuse me, the Captain Kirk and Spock parachute jumper, because they had parachutes. And so that was back in the day, and then how it kind of evolved over time. And I think when people say, why aren't they making merch, what they really specifically mean is not merch. They mean, why aren't they making action figures of these characters? Why can't I go to Target and pick up the Captain Rios action figure and the La Serena, action figure toy from Target? And who do we got there? Is that a little Star Trek?
It's a little Forge.
A little Forge, yeah. So
Forge.
people are saying, why don't they have that in the stores? And it's a fair question, number one. And what I do in my video is I go through is the fact that what wound up happening is, I don't know how, I'm going to try to go through this really quickly. Basically, they were making too many limited edition series for the Star Trek action figures. And then that's, in my personal opinion, where the idea of Star Trek collector's items kind of really spawned from, because people were trying to get complete sets, but the Playmates guys weren't able to keep up with the demand, and there was this whole mess with all that. So what happened over time was they went to more of the 12-inch collector figures as opposed to individual like little toys that they were selling. So they kind of over time went away from that. And then now where we're at currently is they're focusing on the starships from Eagle Moss that sell like gangbusters. They're focusing on shirts, hats, pins, jackets, those kinds of things. And then
things
more
with utility too.
Exactly.
Like you see lots of like kitchen stuff, cars, or like rooms, like I have a bunch of Star Trek kitchen implements. So like there's lots of practical stuff.
So this is like a thing you just got me thinking about this as well. How many people buy action figures these days? I haven't bought one for probably 10 years now, unless we count Lego.
The only ones I buy are like the collectible ones, like I just showed. That's the only ones that I buy.
With myself, you mentioned utility as well. I'm about to move house.
Unless you count these. If you count pop figures, because do we count pop figures as action figures? These are basically just action figures of our day.
Collectibles in quotation marks, to be honest.
Yeah.
The thing is, but that kind of, even the pop thing kind of goes back to that collector's item mentality, which is the pop figures are usually they're numbered. There's a limited series run. They have different versions. Like they have.
I would relate
all those
pop
things.
figures to what used to be action figures. It's just a new brand, kind of. So it's like if you counted things like that, then I buy Star Trek action figures.
As I was about to say, though, like you've mentioned like utility and stuff like that, so you've got shirts and kitchen stuff. As someone who's about to move house, I'm finding myself going around my room at the minute in office and going, I've got so much shit I don't can get rid of. Like I just get gaming stuff in general, like toys and stuff, or action figures and models. Like with t-shirts, it's pretty easy to take them with me. However, other stuff is like, oh, for Christ's sakes, I have to get the box again, box it up, take it to unbox it, dust it off. It's stuff like that. Do people have the time these days to do collections? Like someone else just pushed out in the chat as well. Kids don't really play with toys these days. The average kid is more entertained with an iPad or YouTube in general these days. They don't have toys or action figures anymore. Whereas I grew up, and you guys probably did as well, and had action figures or play sets, etc. of your favorite stuff. Yeah. Kids don't
had Jurassic Parks. I guess you call them action figures.
I would like. Here's the thing: is so there's a couple of extra factors there, right? So when they produced action figures for the Kelvin timeline films. And Alex Kurtzman was obviously involved with that trilogy. And so we don't have any sales figures for that. But I do know, based off, again, of that video and the research I did, there was a frustration with the quality of the toys that were produced. They were not up to code or what their standards were, and of what they actually wanted the figures to look like and to feel like and to play like. And there was some issues with those. And I'm assuming behind closed doors that they didn't probably sell all that much. So I'm assuming that they're not devoting the resources towards action figures, at least with these shows. Discovery and Picard are not for kids.
Yeah.
Those shows
No.
are not kid friendly. And so I'm with it. It makes sense. Where I'm going to raise a bit of a concern flag is when Lower Decks rolls out. And that one is, I know it's supposed to be, from what we've been told, it's supposed to be for like a younger teen audience / adult audience. It's not like the super childlike one, like the Nickelodeon one's supposed to be. So once Lower Decks and this Nickelodeon show come out and they're still not producing toys for kids to purchase or for parents to purchase for their kids, then I'm going to be like, okay, I think you guys might be missing some of the market here, because those shows are designed, from what they've told us, to pull in a younger audience, whereas these shows are clearly engaged towards people who are a bit older and have not watched Star Trek, or people who are older and are huge Trek fans. And that's just what these shows are about. They're way more. I mean, we just watched an episode where somebody got a knife thrown through their neck.
Yeah.
Like, it's not for kids.
How about
you
sell
know?
collectible knives? I'd
Hugh
buy one of
action
those Romulan
figures
knives.
selling now.
Comes
now
with
with
a
a
Right, yeah,
knife.
with removable knife to the
with
neck. It's
removable
super
knife.
cool. Yeah, you can get your chip toy where you can pull out the eye yourself. Like, no, like they're not like they're not like. But do I think that we're gonna get
Oh, God.
a 12-inch of Hugh in his his reclamation director outfit, and that's going to be something like a collector's item? Sure, I do think that we'll get those.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
I would like the
I do think
Romulan
we'll get
knife, to be honest. You know, I'd buy that. No, on a serious note, for that, as you know, I just bought a lightsaber, so I'm all for collectible weapons and weird shit, to be honest, to display. I'd buy
I'm
that.
also all about collectibles.
Well, what they'll do is they'll do a Romulan knife set for actually eating. Is
Oh,
what the blade will be for cutting a steak.
Dinner
you know?
around my house would be hilarious in that way.
That's it. You can cut your pizza with your Enterprise pizza cutter.
Pizza cutter,
you know,
yep.
We'll get some Gatorade and call it Romulan Ale or something like that.
that's fine. Put a little vodka in there. You're good to go.
Dinner dates
Hell
of Trek
yeah.
Central coming soon. Come dine with me, Trek Central style. Coming soon.
Yeah, it's our special blend of Romulan ale. What's in it? Blue Gatorade and vodka.
That sounds
That's
like
how
a
I
great
survived
idea.
after parties.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
If anyone wondering who's hosting the Star Trek Las Vegas party this year, it's us, so look forward to that.
Seriously,
Be a
that'd
disaster.
fun.
I mean, we'd be fun.
Michael,
we
thank
would
you
be.
for the
Don't-
donation
yeah.
there. Says Hugh's death should be avenged by Seven and or Elnor. Hopefully Narissa, the XBs are surrounding. That could be interesting. She needs to be put off that Borg key pretty fast. Picard's brain
I want
disease
her
will
to
come to
die.
head in season 3-4, but maybe could if synth research is reinstated, or maybe Q. Exactly, the disease thing. That's one thing we forgot to before we end this off, because we're going to go on a tangent again most likely. Did you
Yeah.
notice when he first hugged Troi, she asked him twice if he's okay, almost like she could detect that he's not
100%.
technically well. So it's
She
like
knew. She knew.
that's the second time now they've made a point of that. The first, obviously, being Dr. Benayoun stating it plainly and straightforwardly. Meanwhile, in this episode, I think unless you know Troi as a character, you may not pick up on that. So the average viewer who's new to it may not pick up on it entirely, but some might.
Yeah, so I actually watched that. Funnily enough, I actually watched Seven last night with one of my buddies who's kind of new to Star Trek. He's one of the new
Hey,
people
same
that were
here.
got pulled in, and he didn't get that, and because he also didn't know who Troi was. Like, he was like, okay, I get that they served on the ship or whatever, and they were in the show, but I never watched The Next Generation, so I don't really know what's going on. So he didn't really get that. So I kind of had to explain to him, well, she's not a human, she's Beta Z, and they can kind of sense these things. And I was like, in that sequence where she asks him the second time, and then he's like, I'm fine. I was like, that to me watching it was that she was detecting that he has that the illness is back, and that she was aware of it. So I agree with you 100%. She definitely was cognizant of that, for sure.
That's what I picked up on too.
Yeah. I think it was a great little detail to bring into there. I think it stuck out really well. So I liked it.
It was necessary, because if they didn't do that, then everyone would be sitting there saying, why didn't Deanna detect that Picard's sick? And there would be a whole friggin' bubble boo about that. So is she no longer Beta Z, or, Yeah.
No, she's 25% different, Nick. Come on now.
That's true. That's true. You're right. So is Riker. He has a full beard instead of the lined beard. It's 25% different. It's different Riker.
We're going to start wrapping up the stream now before we get in too much trouble for our sarcastic jokes.
It wasn't even Will. It was, what was the other guy? Thomas.
Oh, God.
His
yeah.
his
Yeah,
transporter duplicate.
Tom.
Yeah.
Stole his wife. What the hell? Anyway, everyone,
You know,
thank you for tuning in to Trek Central Live this week. We're going to end off here before we do go on a tangent, and we'll be in 900 years into the future like another series. But join us next week where we'll be discussing Episode 8. Our preview breakdown of Episode 8 will be live on Tuesday, I believe. So stick around for that, where we theorize what might be happening. Brie herself will be doing that one, so keep an eye out for it. It's pretty interesting. I've written it, and I'm pretty crazy with my theories and speculation, so definitely keep an eye on it. It's going to be quite fun. Thank you to everyone who donated tonight. Greatly appreciate everyone. Again, if you do want to become a YouTube member, the join button's down below. Click it and you can learn more about it. Thank you to Michael who sent me an email about that as well. You can reach out to the team here at Trek Central via our Discord server, our Twitter or email if that's the type of thing you'd like. Anyway works. We're always grateful to hear from you. Thank you to my co-hosts Nick and Brie for joining me tonight, guys. Great as always.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Of course.
It's fun.
And also, we'll be back next week with episode 8 at 9 p.m. GMT on Sunday. The date escapes me. It's Sunday the 15th next week. Yay. We'll be discussing episode 8, and I think it's going to be an amazing one. Don't know what happens yet, but 7 lines back, so you can tell it's going to be a fantastic episode. All right, everyone, Thank you for beaming in. As Dom's just put it, that's going to be our official outro for this week, and we'll see you very soon. Goodbye.